Well, thank you all for braving the weather this evening. I know it's pretty miserable outside, and it's my fantastic privilege tonight to spend a little bit of time talking to Emma Weston from Agri Digital. The purpose of the sessions that we run, the alumni series sessions, really is to just get a little bit of an understanding of the journey that some of our fantastic alumni like Emma have been through, for each of you to ask some questions, and really, I guess, unpick some of the experiences that Emma and AgriDigital have been through. Personally, we've run, I think, 350 events this year. We've had over 13,000 people come through our doors, which just seems absolutely crazy. But I absolutely love these sessions because I think they're authentic, they're genuine, and I love when people like Emma come because I know I can ask whatever I want and there'll be no holds barred. So we've got 45 minutes. We would like to run this session as informally as possible. So please, I know Emma won't mind, ask questions as we go, just put your hand up. It's better that way. We'll save a little bit of the time at the end, but please just sort of chip in as we go. And without further ado, I think I'm going to start by introducing you, Emma. And I was a little, shouldn't say surprised, but impressed when I read your bio for the first time at about 4:45 today. That's how organised I was. Because I actually met Emma and Bob, her co-founder, in December 2015, which for any of you that's been running a startup for a while, you'd know that sort of lifetime ago. And I was having a quick read of what you've achieved since then, and I know you're very humble, so I'm just going to lay some plaudits for you. So in December 2016, AgriDigital achieved the world's first physical settlement of a physical agri-commodity on the blockchain between a farmer and a buyer in New South Wales. In 2017, AgriDigital was awarded the Excellence in Blockchain and Distributed Ledger Technology Award. And to top it off that same year, Emma won the Female FinTech Leader of the Year and Emerging FinTech Leader of the Year, the awards with FinTech Australia, and she was voted, just to be a quiet achiever, one of the top 25 influencers in FinTech. So pretty impressive stuff. And on that sort of note, Emma, why don't you introduce yourself to the group and maybe just say a little bit about AgriDigital and what you do?
Sure. So it's really nice to be back here. It's been quite an honour. I remember really throwing myself into everything that Stone and Chalk had to offer and going to Fireside chats and all those sorts of things. So it's a bit weird to be
You're on the other side
of the side. It's a bit weird. It doesn't feel quite right. But look, yes, for anybody who doesn't know me, my name's Emma Weston. I'm the CEO and a co-founder at AgriDigital. I have two co-founders, Bob McKay and Ben Reed. And we kind of kicked off AgriDigital around a kitchen table, literally. That got a bit small. We moved to the dining room table, moved to the garage, and then moved to Stone and Chalk. So it's a pretty typical story, isn't it, of how anyone gets to Stone and Chalk. And I think we moved in January 2016. Chris and I were just chatting briefly before, and he said that Bob sent an email saying something like, hey, look, we're thinking of disrupting the farming sector. We think we fit into Stone and Chalk. We
hopefully will have three people.
Hopefully we'll have
fingers
three
crossed.
people, fingers crossed, in January, and that's a bit mind-blowing. So we're about 50 people now. We moved out of Stone and Chalk a little while ago, probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, as we were growing. And basically AgriDigital, this thing that we thought that we might disrupt the farming sector, whatever that actually meant at the time, has changed into, or has morphed into, a software company that provides digital commodity management platform and products to the agricultural sector, particularly to bulk grains and cotton. So effectively what that means is that for physical supply chain, we are taking the world of the physical supply chain and we're digitizing it all the way from the farmer through to the consumer. So we actually are the transactional engine for the movement of that commodity as it goes through the supply chain. We actually do all the boring things. We do buy-sell contracts, we do inventory management, we do payments. So it's everything that basically gets an agricultural product off the farm and gets it through to the food part of the system. And we stop at the food part of the system at the moment, or at export. That's basically our sweet spot. We always thought we had a fintech element. It just took us a little while to get there.
And convince me and Alex, but that's all right.
And convince you guys. You may have even said no to begin with, I'm not sure. There has definitely been a few no's along the journey. We started our first fund, so Fund 1 this year, which was supply chain finance into the cotton market. And so we were funding bales of cotton to move from the farm gate through the supply chain and to export. And I'm not going to go into like kind of the intricacies of how that happens, but it's actually the first product of its kind that we're aware of globally. And that's really been our specialty, is really looking for where there is no servicing of a particular market and actually introducing a product, a finance product, a risk management product, and they all come off the back of our digital commodity management platform. So we need to digitize first, and then we can put products and services over the top.
Great. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to go back to 2, 3, 4 years ago and talk to the group about the genesis of the idea and what you and Bob and your other co-founders were doing at the time and what led you to the idea. And I guess one of the things that really always impressed me when you first arrived at Stone and Chalk was just how bold the vision was. I mean, it was a different company name and we're not quite, I think the proposition's moved on a long way since then, but you were very clear around the problem you were solving. So how did you come to that?
Yeah, so thank you. That's a compliment. I think we have actually been very clear about what we've set out to achieve, and that's largely because we come from the domain. So by that I mean Bob, Ben and myself have spent collectively the last 85 years working in agricultural supply chains. We're also all farmers, and so you can say that we're scratching our own itch in a way. But the reason that we came together to build AgriDigital, which used to be called Full Profile, and I can talk about why we changed the name. But
Please do, because you used to berate me every time I got the name wrong. So.
Okay, I'll come back to that, Mark. I'll come back to that. But the reason we started AgriDigital was really twofold. We had been involved in supply chain for a very long time. We had exited a couple of businesses successfully, and we actually found ourselves with some financial runway to work with, and the passion and the knowledge that we actually hadn't solved the problems that we knew were endemic to supply chains. So we'd been working in this space for a long time, but really around the fringes of the problems, not actually solving the problems, and then found ourselves, financially able to come together and say, if we had a blank sheet of paper, what problems would we solve and how would we go about doing it? And we really settled on 3 problems. And that actually hasn't changed
Tell us the other problems. What other companies could you be building right now that you didn't, and why?
Yeah, do you want me to say that? Yeah, okay. So we very quickly dismissed the pre-farm gate sector. So farm tech, there is incredible amount of competition. There's already an increasing amount of commoditization around yield optimization services, predictive analytics on farm, farm connectivity and farm robotics. So actually I don't think farm robotics are commoditized, but the others are getting quite commoditized. So we are very passionately interested in that space, but felt there were already incredible players working there, and also felt that Australia did not necessarily have a competitive advantage as a nation producing change makers and problem solvers that could compete globally. So we knew that when we started AgriDigital, it was a global business from the beginning, that we were going to take it into the scale markets, and that we had to have a natural competitive advantage, a reason to come from Australia, if you like, and go to the world. So that was one space that we decided not to go down. We actually looked very early on at insurance. And not that I'm saying insurance is not a good idea. It's probably
the InsurTech meetup's in the other room, so if we talk loudly, maybe we'll get some of them over here.
What we decided was that the market for insurance is largely dependent upon the data market, as in the future of insurance is largely dependent upon the data market, and that we were more interested in the way that data was fragmented across the chain and the way in which we could aggregate it and produce new sets of data and gain insight from that data than actually producing risk products per se. And that insurance itself could be under threat because if you believe in an extreme data model over time, then you can effectively bypass the insurer and go straight to the reinsurer. So we decided that that wasn't necessarily a good spot.
And was this thinking that was happening around the kitchen table, or where were you when you were having these bold visions of what the future will look like in 5 years' time?
Now, given that this is like a nice, cosy fireside chat, Bob and I are married, so it happens everywhere.
We'll go back to what it's like being married to your co-founder. I'm sure a few of us in this room.
As in the conversations happen everywhere. So, so everywhere from, brushing your teeth, through to...
let's not go there.
At the petrol pump, wherever. I just don't think we stop having conversations about the problems that we see and the way in which they can be solved, or whether we think we're good and we have an advantage in solving those problems. But we are very hard on thinking about whether we are the right people to solve those problems, and we're very clear that when we don't think we are the right people, we let the problem go.
And clearly you thought you were the right people for this problem. What was some of the thinking behind your competitive advantage, I guess, versus others?
The thing that we know really, really well is how to price risk in the supply chain. And we know and understand the movement of physical commodity and how to actually price that commodity at any point in time, and the importance of pricing that commodity. So that's something we understand really well. We also understand farmers really well. And so another decision that we made really early on was not to sell to farmers. I'm a farmer and I wouldn't buy our product at the moment. So, the ability to be kind of really critical, I guess, and to be very focused around driving for product market fit, I think is what has led to us being successful to this point. And I just constantly hone that with the team now. Also, interestingly, Bob was the CEO when we came to Stone and Chalk. So yeah, I staged a coup. I staged a coup at some point.
You toppled him?
Yeah, I did.
You can tell us about how that happened later.
Yeah,
which bad decisions or negotiations led to that happening?
I'm happy to share that later.
Yeah, but okay. So we've talked about the idea, and clearly you were thinking globally, which is fantastic. It was a big vision. You knew the product. You knew you had the right team. Let's talk about the inception of the company. So how did it happen? Talk to us about where you were at when you joined Stone and Chalk. You had 3 people. How far along sort of the development phase were you? Did you have a customer? What was your plan?
Yeah, okay, so there's probably a couple of things I can mention here. One is we really thought we should have a plan when we walked into Stone and Chalk, so we did put a bit of a plan together. And of course that plan looks nothing like what the plan looks today, quite naturally. The thing that really was a big step change for us, so we had incorporated, we'd done all those sorts of things before we came to Stone and Chalk. Side note, we had sold a previous business, Bob and I, and Ben, our third co-founder, had been an employee shareholder in that business. And so when we were building Full Profile, which later became AgriDigital, we actually naturally went back to the owners of that business that we had sold and said, hey, you liked us so much the first time you bought the company, we've now got a new idea. And said to them, how about we partner on this? You understand ag, us, we're good people, we know how to build and take this to market. And they actually said, basically, this is so big, this is too bold, this is going to cost much more than you think, of which they were absolutely correct. If we're to come on, then we basically want a huge amount of equity, and we want you to take all the risk. And
how did you take their feedback? Was that one of the first sort of negative, constructive criticism, I believe they call it? I receive it a lot from a client or potential partner. And did that sort of sway your decision making, or did you just decide to push through?
I think what we did is we looked at each other and we just said, we know we can make this work. And it wasn't so much of, let's prove it, we'll show those people or anything like that. It was just more on the sense of they either want so much so they can control the outcome, or they want so much because they know this is hugely valuable. How much do we back ourselves to achieve both? Control and to create something that's valuable. And so we just looked at each other and said, well, this is the time that you start thinking about what size of check you would write. And let's think of ourselves as investors here, investing in ourselves. What are we actually prepared to do? And so we actually sat down and said, rather than having this kind of endless dripping of funds, what are we prepared to commit, and what do we need to achieve? What milestones need to be achieved in order for us to feel that that was an investment that was worthwhile? And so that was the plan that we basically walked into Stone and Chalk with, was as founders, we're prepared to commit this amount of money, and these are the milestones that need to be achieved. And by that time, we think we've got something that we're going to call that a seed round, and we're going to take a Series A round to investors, and these are the traction results and other that we're going to have.
And talk to us about some of the detail of that first year. So what were some of the metrics or goals that you were holding yourselves to account for, and did you hit them?
Yeah, so I think the other thing that was just really formative in that first year was Westpac, a partner at Stone & Chalk, happened to decide to have a blockchain hackathon. And they heard about this quite random ag tech posing as a fintech in Stone & Chalk, and came to us and said, hey, we've heard about you guys. We heard that you're playing around with blockchain. Why don't you come and be part of this hackathon? And we're running an agricultural stream. And so I turned to the team, which was super easy because it was like 3 of us, it's just like sitting next to each other. And I said, I love competitions. So I'm like, okay, if we go in this, we win the agricultural stream, right?
If we win, I get to be CEO.
Yeah, that was the deal. That's how it happened. So I said, if we're going to go in it, we've got to win it. We've got to use this for all it's worth. And it was fantastic because when we decided to do all the planning, and we said we're going to work within the hackathon constraints of 48 hours of build and then presentation. And so we won't do any coding beforehand, but we'll do all of the planning and preparation beforehand. And we found out that we had massive gaps in our team. So I had to quickly go and say, hey, we need to plug those gaps and go and find, a front-end specialist, that understood this type of market, another blockchain specialist, and, all those sorts of things, and kind of construct this team of, what then became 6 or 7 people that went into the hackathon. So I think it exposed really quickly the gaps that we had, and then we had this really constrained time to build product and to pitch it. And so I think that was really fundamental because we found out as we came into the hackathon that there was only one entrant in the agricultural stream. And so it was like, yay, we won. So I turned around to the team, I said, you know what this means. We've got to win the whole damn thing now. We can't just turn up. We've really got to win. And it was the first really big lesson for me because everybody turned around and said, oh, well, if that's fine, Emma, you're no good at coding, you're no good at this bit, you're no good at that bit, so you're going to have to pitch it because that's the only thing you're good at. And so I said, okay, good, that's fine, I'm happy, presentation skills, that's fine, I'm not too bad at that. And then, as everyone was building out and I realized how much effort they were not going to sleep and, 48 hours of building, I was like, wow, this is coming down to 5 minutes of me, for all this effort, 48 hours times 6 that everyone else had put in. And so I thought I better do a really good job. And I think I'm on record for saying that a number of times I get really disappointed quite often when I go to pitch competitions because I don't think people have put enough effort in when they pitch. And I probably practiced for 12 hours that 5-minute pitch because that's what you do when you want to win, right? That's what you do if you're a winner. You make sure that you are putting everything into it. And I had 12 hours and I wasn't needed on anything else. What I was needed to do was give the best pitch and put us in the best possible position that we could. So that's what I did for 12 hours. And I literally was in the toilets going, my name's Emma Weston. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Agri Digital. I'm also a farmer. And, anyway, it just went on and on and on, but, and still trying to remain authentic and, so forth. But we did win, and it just suddenly there was this massive PR buzz around us. And then we had to, then the plan was important because then we had to not just say that we were doing things, we had to actually do them.
And what was the result of that program? What happened with Westpac? Did anything happen? Did it go well?
So lots of conversations happened, and
good experience for you in terms of dealing with a bank, I'm sure.
Yeah, we learnt. I'd never really dealt with banks before in that way, and so we learnt that I've got a particular kind of style, and when we have these conversations now, and quite often I say to banking partners, "Could you draw your org chart for me?" And they go, "No way! There's no way. We don't really know what the bank looks like." And I'm like, well, how do you expect me to partner with you if you can't actually describe who you are and tell me who your boss is and who the decision makers are here? And so, but it took us about 1.5 years to work out how to talk to banks. And so we would explain what we were doing and they would be like, so you basically want to do what we're doing. And we're like, yeah, but better, and so you want to, work with our customers. Our customers love us, and we're like, we don't think they do. Actually Bob prepared this whole speech for one of the banks that we were dealing with, and came in and said, I want to, here is the story of what it's like to borrow money from a bank from your customer, and read out this story. And there was like this really awkward silence afterwards, and then they started laughing, like sort of manically. And then they sort of looked at us, and I was like, we're just like going to get shown the door here. And then they were like, oh, that is so funny because it's true. And we were like, we just thought it was hilarious because I guess, banks know, they know they're kind of, they have this sort of existential crisis in the way that they deal with everything, including startups. And so we've never, to be honest, found a really, really good way of working with the banks, because, quite frankly, we think that we can do what they do better. Ian Narev said to me, God bless his soul, not that he's dead, but, he is having troubles. He said to me that you need us more than we need you, because we have capital and we have customers. And I sit here now and say, that's funny because capital is everywhere. And I can also acquire your customers, and I can service them. I can service the hell out of them.
And by the way, my cost base is a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, much cheaper than you can. So, the world is fundamentally changing from when we had a first conversation with the bank to the kind of conversations we would have now. But the banks also realise that, to their credit. They're not having the same conversations with us either.
So let's go back to the first year. So you mentioned before, so you're starting to prove out the concept, you're building a team. And let's talk about team. So I remember the days when I'd turn the corner of Stone and Chalk and you'd suddenly have another 2, 3, 4 people at the desks. And one of the things I always admired, to be honest, was that you seemed to attract fantastic people into the team. And culturally, everyone just seemed like, I would look at the team and think, are they even working today? There would be sort of, I won't even say control, just chaos amongst all the different startups, and particularly my team. And then you guys would be doing yoga or something like that. And I would just think, what is happening over here and what am I doing wrong? But talk to us about, I guess, in the early days, obviously everyone that you hire has a fundamental sort of impact on your trajectory as a company. Like what was your thinking in the early days and now in terms of just hiring good people?
Yeah, so the rule we have is that I am responsible for the hires. So that doesn't mean I do all the hiring, but at the end of the day, I decide, and I'm deciding all the way to the first 100. That's what we've decided as a team, that we think the first 100 forms our core. And I always say to them, remember this day you've come in as number 51, and in 10 years' time, you'll still be number 51, and that's awesome. That's you've really contributed. Just by taking this step, you've really contributed. So I think that what we are very good at is coming to a realisation quickly if we've made a mistake on the team and on a particular member, and raising that relatively early with that team member, and just making sure that, and checking with them as, whether they think this is a mistake as well. We did have one team member who said, you know what, I've got to leave because it's too hard here. I want to go back to the bank, actually. He was going back to a bank. He said, I want to go to the bank. It's so much easier. It's 9 to 5. And I said, that's awesome. Off you go. This is not the 9 to 5 environment. So, and we never said it was, and you thought you wanted to do a startup, but you didn't, because actually startups are really hard and they're quite demanding. And you have to really have a passion for the mission, I think. So we do look for that. At the same point in time, I'm hesitant to talk about cultural fit, because we don't want to end up with, 100 Emmas. That'd be pretty scary. So, we don't want 100 people that are all the same. We need to have, the strength comes from the diversity of the team. What's really core, therefore, is our values. So we're not looking for people that are the same as us, but we're looking for people that we think espouse the values that we have, which are customer first and power to deliver, be courageous, and love what you do. So, there are 4 values. That's what we kind of test for. We do test every role. So it doesn't matter which role it is, if it's a marketing manager, if it's a developer, if it's a CFO, you know, I mean, we need to develop a test that says, when you're coming in, can you show us that you actually have the skills? Because we can't afford to make too many mistakes. But I think that, you know, the team build, I take pride in, and I do see it as my personal business as well as, you know, my professional business. I like to think that the team love being part of AgriDigital. They don't have to love me all of the time. That's absolutely fine. There's going to be, you know, there's room for disagreement. I can be quite demanding because I will defend the rights of our customer to have the best product that we can build. And sometimes that can mean hard decisions with people that, you know, that means, you know, compromising, making some other compromise in order to get something out to a customer, for example. And so, you know, we try to think about our values when we make those sorts of decisions. Can
you give an example there, maybe of a time that in the early days something fundamentally just didn't work?
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, lots of things don't work. You know, that's the truth. There's lots of, you know, to a certain extent, you're responsibly selling ahead of your development. You know, you're trying to build a customer base that's enthused by your vision, sees where you're going, understands your roadmap, but also understands that you're not all the way there yet. So, you know, I guess an example would be that at times we may have got ahead of ourselves from a sales perspective and got a little over-enthusiastic about the way that we were bringing our product to customers. And we've had to go very quickly back to those customers and say, we believe in transparency and we need to confess that what you thought we were going to deliver, we're not going to deliver, or not in the time frame that you thought it was going to be delivered. And that's been something that we continue to work on really hard as a team, is our estimations. So part of the learning curve for me, I think, has not been about being a CEO as such, it's been a CEO of a tech company, and the kind of skills that we need to have as a tech company, and my responsibility to drive for quality around our approach to building tech.
And it sounds like a big expectations management piece as well.
For customers it is, because what we've found with customers, you know, what we've found with users is that they love what we do so much that sometimes it's not that we've oversold something or anything like that, it's just that they want the next bit and we're not quite ready to deliver the next bit. So, you know, that's one of the challenges of scaling is it's a complex product. There's probably a reason that there's only 6 or 7, you know, true bulk commodity CTRM ERPs in the world. Most of them are like the SAPs and the Oracle JD Edwards. And, you know, it's a very complex beast to build out. And we have quite a different view as to how to go about it. So, you know, that does... I think that means you just got to be honest, I think. You know, I think we haven't lost a customer yet, so we have had 0 churn. And we're really proud of that. But it's going to happen one day. You know, unfortunately, we will disappoint someone or something will happen and a customer will leave for whatever reason. And I think that'll be a big truth moment for us.
How many customers do you have now?
So we have 37 subscribing customers. We have 2,500 users. So the majority of our users are actually farmers, and we don't charge for the product for access to farmers. And we have another 5,500 what we call casual users. So AgriDigital is now in 38 countries around the world. And those casual users are those who are a counterparty to a transaction and may have only gone into AgriDigital once. But
Can we just go back
users.
to 38 countries? That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that. I'm sure there's some people in the room here who wish that their product was in 38 countries. Where are you? How did you get there? I guess it's a mentality of global first business, but just how does that work and how do you sleep?
I sleep well. I sleep well when I sleep. Yeah. I'm lucky I don't need a lot of sleep, so that's good. So the reason we're in 38 countries is because we specifically built out the product to have network effect. So we understood the concentric interactions of the supply chain and the way in which you can turn one customer into many customers. And so, we might bring on one subscriber and they might bring on 250 users for us. And so, this is the way that we've been able to accelerate user growth. We also decided very early on that our strategy was to work with exporting nations. That gives us the advantage of following the commodity all the way through, or the asset all the way through the chain from the very beginning. So if we work in Australia, that means that the majority of those 38 countries are actually in Southeast Asia, West Asia, China. It's within a draw zone of export from Australia. So our next country of growth from our perspective is the United States. Actually, we're looking at North America as one country. It's not, of course, one country, and Canada and the US are very different, but for us, it's basically one market. And we look at export markets, and then that basically will bring on, probably another 22 to 25 countries from that particular launching pad. We then launch into South America from there, so that basically allows us to track down into South America, which probably adds another 14 countries. And the next, and probably most complex for us, is Eastern Europe, so Black Sea, the breadbasket of Europe, and that would probably bring on another kind of 32 countries roughly. So there'll be some crossover between all of those different countries, but we have a very deliberate growth plan.
Okay. Now, it wouldn't be a fintech event if we didn't start talking about the blockchain for at least 5 minutes.
Not to mention the B word.
I did well. So I guess I'm just really interested. I mean, some would say you've timed the company perfectly in terms of the blockchain sort of craze and wave. But talk to us about, I guess, the thinking in the early days and how your thinking evolved over time to today, what you're actually doing on the blockchain, and sort of, I guess, where you think the technology will take in terms of enabling AgriDigital into the future.
Yeah, so it's been a really interesting journey that we've had with blockchain. So I am not ashamed to admit that I first really only looked into blockchain in 2016. It was a little bit before the Westpac hackathon. We didn't kind of just enter that and like, oh, what is, I better Google blockchain. It was, we was a little bit more prepared than that. But when I was thinking about the problems we wanted to solve for around transaction security, payment security, and access to data and data fragmentation across the supply chain, and I thought about supply chain as being inherently distributed in any case, and characterized by a lack of trust and a lack of cooperation between the participants of the chain. And I started reading more and more about blockchain. Light bulbs were kind of constantly going off in my head, and I'd literally just wake up during the night and kind of write another idea, down on the notepad beside the bed. So it started off as just a highly exploratory phase that was then, I guess, the crucible was the hackathon with Westpac, where we were forced to use the tech. And we said, we're not going to smoke and mirrors this, we're really going to build this out. And so we had to build out on Hyperledger at the time using Bluemix, version 1. It was really, really hard. And then I realized there were lots of gaps. And so then I started looking at different technical protocols as they were developing to see why there were so many problems with Hyperledger at the time. Came across Ethereum, just thought the whole concept of Ethereum and the way smart contracts worked, I could immediately see how we could take digitization into the next generation through full automation of workflows and atomic transactions. So I then said, let's go and build out this on a blockchain, let's build out a process flow, let's execute it with our first customer, let's find a farmer who'd be willing to get paid in AgriCoin.
Tell us about that experience. I'm sure that was an easy sales process.
Yeah, it was. I think at the time he was just like, is this real? And I'm like, I'm not sure. And, I don't know exactly. I think, you're not running a startup if you haven't had that experience. I was kind of like, I promise you that we'll pay you in real dollars.
Yep.
But I said, look, what I actually really want to understand from the farmer's perspective is what in this process changed for you as a result of us using the blockchain. And the aim is that nothing changes other than the fact that you have security of payment, and we've removed the counterparty risk by doing a real-time payment on title transfer. So therefore, my aim is that you get a notification before you've left the buyer's driveway that you have actually been paid. That's what I want you to experience. But you tell me if it was, more friction.
And how did it go in that first version?
I think we were so naive, we didn't realise this was a big deal. So we just built it out and did it. And then we thought, maybe we'll tell a few people about it, because we've never operated in stealth. I haven't found that as a useful model at all. So I think we did a media release, and everybody went, oh my God, this is the first, settlement in the world on a blockchain. And it happened with a farmer in Geary, New South Wales. Where is Geary? And what was this? And we started getting all these, AFR wanting to call us and, we're doing a Christmas special, we're going to put you on the cover or something. And I've never been able to lose that photo of me.
I'm still waiting for that call.
Yeah, it was quite bizarre. It was quite bizarre. And so we hadn't, what happened from that was we did that first settlement. We realised this is actually really amazing. This is the only way you can truly remove the counterparty risk in a commingled bulk commodity sense. Because if you think about it, the physical commodity is delivered in, it's mixed with everybody else's, and there's no way that you can re-identify your asset and return it to you if you're not paid. And there had been this massive problem in the space with non-payment. So, so we were blown away by the fact that we'd been able to build it, we'd been able to achieve it. But then we started getting deeper into blockchain and having a look at not just real-time payment on title transfer, but the way programmable assets worked, the way that we could build out provenance and auditable trails. But the thing that has fascinated me really the most is the ability to build out really novel finance products in particular. And so that's what's really captured my imagination, is next generation finance and risk management on blockchain. And although it didn't receive anywhere near as much press, probably because people didn't understand it, the pilot, so we then engaged, we just went out and said, do you want to do a pilot with us? Do you want to, and then people started coming to us as well, so that was great. But the pilot that we did with Rabobank, where we took their structured inventory product, it was a product that basically, to get a drawdown from the bank, or to actually execute that structured inventory product, and to get a payment through, was a process that would take somewhere between 3 to 6 weeks to get it all completed, and it was 136 sequential steps. So we then built that into a series of smart contracts and were able to transform that to a process that took 50 milliseconds, and it was a multi-partite contract. Behind the scenes, we did all of the ledger entries on blockchain, but we actually did the ledger entries in Xero, for example. So all of the accounting was also done, all of the back office was completed. And we settled it all, and this is something I'm equally passionate about. We had to settle it, and that really blockchain works best where you're settling on chain, not having to go back to traditional rails. But so we went on this journey of naivety through to very organised pilots. We then said, hey, isn't blockchain ironic? We're using it because we don't trust each other and because we can't cooperate, but let's all cooperate enough to form a consortium, which is, in retrospect, a bit of a crazy idea, which is why they're all falling apart now. So we had a bit of a go at that ourselves, and everybody wanted to join the consortium so they could work with AgriDigital and get AgriDigital to execute their blockchain projects. And I said, no, we're not a consulting company. We don't want to do that work. So we weren't successful in building out a consortium, despite the high level of interest. So what we've actually done now is we have accumulated an incredible amount of IP. We've built out what we call a commercial protocol, a commercial blockchain protocol. So it sits on top of Ethereum as a technical protocol, and it's basically the gap between industry wanting to avail itself of blockchain and the advantages of blockchain, but not knowing how to build out the standards, the smart contracts and the commercial interactions that need to take place. So we've built all of that out. It's a protocol layer, a standard set of digital assets, standard set of smart contracts, and then we're currently going through the process of spinning that out into a foundation, so it won't be AgriDigital anymore, and we're doing that largely because we think this should be available to everybody. And the things that I know really well are grains and cotton. So I don't know tapioca, and I don't know pearls, and I don't know magic mushrooms and medicinal cannabis and boxed goat meat and everything else that comes our way, but I think that they should all be on the blockchain as well if they want to be, and I'm a big advocate for people experimenting. I don't care if the use case is good or bad. I think experimentation is great, and I think if we'd all taken that attitude with the internet, we never would have got anywhere if we'd said that it had to be a perfect use case in order to be viable. So I think that what we're doing is enabling others through the learnings that we've had. So it's an out-of-the-box set of smart contracts that just gets people on board, gets them using it, and at AgriDigital we focus on being the very best application within the blockchain tech stack, if you like.
Wow, that's pretty bold vision. So talk to us then. So you've got the technology, you've had the first couple of customers, and you're hitting your scale journey, which I know for most of the startups in the room, they're about that stage. And obviously that brings a whole host of challenges. Talk to us about, maybe 2 or 3 that sort of stood out for you as really pivotal moments in the journey, maybe some things that worked and some things that didn't, and maybe when you reflect back, some things that you would have done differently.
So earlier this year, I took the decision to pull the pin on a finance product that we were about to launch. It's really hard when you've had a team work on something for over 12 months to make that decision, but I was confident that we were launching into a suboptimal market, and that we didn't have the structure of the fund and the relationships right with the investors into that fund, and that we would be creating way too much operational pressure for ourselves that would put too much pressure on our platform operations. That's a really hard decision to take when people are very heavily vested and they have their identity around a particular project, and that's all they've done at AgriDigital, and then you say, we're not going to go ahead with that anymore and we're going to redeploy you elsewhere. So that was a hard decision, but everybody understood. And we are regenerating that project in a different way. I think that other challenges that we've had have been from... Our product is very well suited to the mid-tier market, so tier 2s and tier 3s within the agricultural supply chain, traders and site operators in the main. We've had reasonable challenge from the tier 1 market, because I'm unapologetic about the fact that we're here for the majority of participants who have the minority of transactions at the moment. And the reason they have the minority of transactions is because they don't have access to good tech and good finance, and that's why we're here. So we're here to enable them to have the majority of transactions, and that means that they can take on the tier 1s. So, leveling the playing field. That's what a lot of startups do, I think, and we do it really well, but that doesn't come without, some name calling and, people questioning your motives and, all those sorts of things. We've just got to stay on mission and be very focused on what we're doing. Another challenge we've had is thinking about how we globalize. So both in terms of product build and so that, the technical components of globalization, but also the operational components of globalization, and having a very clear strategy around how we go into North America. So I've spent for the last 15 months, I've basically almost done 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off between here and the US. I've got 4 kids, so that's pretty trying. That's tough on everyone, including our team here in Sydney. So I'm very thankful for the way the team has stepped up to enable me to put together the growth strategy for North America and to do the market validation piece. It's been kind of costly, but I think we would have made some very costly mistakes if we hadn't been very deliberate in the way we've been investigating that market, the way we've been brand building and building relationships over there. And I'd say that's one of our strong suits, is I think we're good people doing good things. And so, the relationship piece has stood us in good stead. What was the other part of the question? Challenges? There's been many.
Well, I mean, I think
failures.
I think maybe if you could reflect back and give either one piece of advice or one thing you wish you knew to the group, what would it be?
If I had known...
You had a crystal ball.
Yeah, if I had known how quickly tech debt can accumulate, then, I think that's part of me not being a technologist by background and coming from the commercial sphere, is not necessarily understanding and being able to empathise with the position of the developer and some of the recommendations they make around tech build versus product versus, commercial implication and impact. So I'm actually just a lot wiser around how to build good tech now and how to make that a core competency within our business. We're still striving and we've still got to do much better. But it's very easy for me to float back to customer and, float to sales and float to marketing and float to some of the commercial parts. And I try and spend a lot more time really understanding more and more about the tech. I've had to do a lot of education myself. So I wish I had known that earlier, so that I could have taken perhaps some corrective action and I would have made some slightly different build decisions if I'd better understood the impact.
Fantastic. So just in the interest of time, we might wrap today there, but can you please all join me in thanking Emma? Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.